Hi.
Hi again. We're in the middle of the end of the Gentile times in the chapter Growing in Accurate Knowledge of the Truth. This is page 134 in the Proclaimer's book.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to read just that page because there's a lot of information here which actually is misinformation. We're not sure how much of it is deliberate, as maybe they don't know exactly, but they haven't read the books closely enough if that's the case.
So we've done 3 paragraphs from that subtitle, End of the Gentile Times.
Right, we're at the bottom of page 134 now.
Early in 1876, C.T. Russell received a copy of Herald of the Morning. He promptly wrote to Barber and then spent time with him in Philadelphia during the summer, discussing, among other things, prophetic time periods. Shortly thereafter, in an article entitled Gentile Times, When Do They End?, Russell also reasoned on the matter from the Scriptures, and stated that the evidence showed that the 7 times will end in A.D. 1914. This article was printed in October 1876 issue of the Bible Examiner, and that's a publication magazine by George Storrs. This article, the book 3 Worlds and the Harvest of This World, produced in 1877 by Barber in cooperation with Russell, pointed to the same conclusion. Thereafter, early issues of the Watchtower, such as the ones dated December 1879 and July 1880, directed attention to 1914 CE as being a highly significant year from the standpoint of Bible prophecy. In 1889, the entire 4th chapter of the Volume 2 of Millennial Dawn, later called Studies in the Scriptures, was devoted to discussion of the times of the Gentiles. But what would the end of the Gentiles mean?
Gentile times?
The Gentile times mean, yeah. Sorry. The Bible students were not completely sure what would happen. They were convinced that it would not result in a burning up of the earth and a blotting out of human life. Rather, they knew it would mark a significant point in regard to divine rulership. At first, they thought that by that date the kingdom of God would have obtained full universal control. When that did not occur, their confidence in the Bible prophecies that marked the date did not waver. They concluded that, instead, the date had marked only a starting point as to the kingdom rule.
Similarly, they also first thought that global troubles culminating in anarchy, which they understood would be associated with the war of the great day of God the Almighty, would precede that date. Now that's a significant change.
A great tribulation.
Before 1914.
Mm-hmm.
But then, 10 years before 1914, the Watchtower suggested that worldwide turmoil that would result in the annihilating of human institutions would come right after the end of the Gentile times. Notice that, right after.
Mm-hmm.
They actually italicized the word after here, as if they moved the expectation before the date. But they were, what can we say? They were, I wouldn't say second guessing themselves. They were hesitating to be as dogmatic as they'd been before in the first 4 volumes of the Studies in the Scriptures. But they didn't think there was going to be a significant delay after 1914. So they go on, they expected the year 1914 to mark a significant turning point for Jerusalem, since the prophecy had said that Jerusalem would be trodden down till the Gentile times were fulfilled. When they saw 1914 drawing close, and yet they had not died as humans and had been caught up in the clouds to meet the Lord, in harmony with earlier expectations, they earnestly hoped that their change might take place at the end of the Gentile times. So obviously they were expecting to be translated, as some people call it, before 1914. Well, at least at the
by
end.
1914, yeah.
As the years passed, they examined and re-examined the scriptures. Their faith in the prophecies remained strong, and they did not hold back from stating what they expected to occur. With varying degrees of success, they endeavored to avoid being dogmatic about details not directly stated in the scriptures.
Well, that whole last paragraph is a joke. First of all, it is true they didn't hold back from stating what they expected. That's been their biggest problem.
But were they dogmatic?
Yes, they were very dogmatic. And that was the thing that I think maybe was one of the most upsetting things for me, was when I started reading Russell and I saw how dogmatic he was. We talk about tone, his tone being gentle, but not when it came to dates. He was very forceful when he was saying what he thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
And he gave dates, and if you didn't agree, you were somehow, the objectors were just not loving God.
Defying Jehovah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and not only the dogmatism, but the judgmentalism. This is not so much Russell, but it certainly is his followers. So by the time you get the finished mystery coming out, a monument to C.T. Russell in 1917, he's just died, a monument to his memory and to his position in God's plan. By the time you get to the finished mystery and beyond that for 10 years, Rutherford and the gang are really being not only dogmatic, but judgmental towards anyone who dare doubt that Pastor Russell is the faithful slave. And then the tone of Rutherford's own books speaks for itself if you've read any of them.
I think even Russell, by the end of his life, was becoming judgmental. So I remember a lot of statements that seemed to be, because the ministers would meet with him and talk with him and they didn't agree with him, he somehow passed judgment on them
As
at
being
that point.
resisting God. Yeah.
So he by then had a following.
Let me see if I can show you something. I know, Vivian, you thought that I would not be able to.
Well, you can try and show
I'll try.
It's very small.
But it is significant, because in the second paragraph on that page, 135, they say the Bible students were not completely sure what would happen. Now that's nonsense.
Yeah.
We've done many videos on what they expected in 1914.
And they published it.
And there's a cover-up involved. It was already taking place while Russell was still alive in 1915 and 16. The cover-up we've dealt with in another video, which we'll link at the end. But the idea that they're not completely sure, well, here's a little clipping from the Bible Students Monthly, which they were publishing during that period, about what the general impression was of what they were saying about 1914. And then you read the blurb that's under the clip, and you realize, no, you've reinterpreted this. This is what the general impression was the public got.
You have to go really
close.
Inside. Really, really close.
Really, really close. Can you see that? The Bible Students Monthly, end of the world in 1914.
Yeah.
But underneath it, they say this. Oh, if you would read it.
1914, as the end of the Gentile times, was given wide publicity by the Bible students, as in this International Bible Students Association tract distributed during 1914.
You know, if you read that clipping, the whole article under it, even the subhead, you realize that they're saying, no, we don't believe the world will end, i.e. the earth will not be destroyed. So they're stating that accurately. They didn't think the world would end. They thought Jerusalem would be restored, the Jews would be born again around 1914, and God will fulfill all his promises of the Old Testament. They thought all of that. So that was all after 1914. But the general impression you gave everybody out there is exactly what that headline says. The end of the world in 1914, meaning the end of all the institutions on this earth, including the church.
At the end of that paragraph, they say, when this did not occur, their confidence in the Bible prophecies that marked the date did not waver. They concluded that instead the date had marked only a starting point to kingdom rule.
That's an outright lie.
Yeah.
They thought that the kingdom had been born in heaven in 1878. They didn't readjust around 1914 or 10 years before it, as they try to imply here. they didn't readjust that view. They thought it would all wind down, so that 1914 was the end of the time of the end. It was not the beginning of the time of the end. They've tried to fudge that as much as possible in these paragraphs.
Yeah.
What are our links?
We're linking a video about 1914 cover-up and the playlist. Have they ever been God's organization?
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Mm-hmm.